Hi everyone, welcome to the last heart-to-heart conversations about the honest conversations about the writing process. The last one I say before the summer. This is gonna be the last one for this summer. I'm gonna take a break in July and August, and I'll be back with you in September. I have nothing planned for then, so if you want to be on this with me, if you want to have an honest conversation about the writing process with me. Feel free to reach out and we can see whether we can find a topic that that works for us and that we can actually have. Like I said, like for me, this is an honest space, so I really want to dive deep and dig and really get to the heart of the matter in these conversations. So today I have Craig Gibb as a guest, and I am waiting. I see someone's watching, but I'm not sure whether it's him. I'm waiting for him to show up. We've done a live before, so I know we can do this. But what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about pen names, especially in the genres of erotica and romance. And of course, just last week, I published together with Sheena Mary. We co-write these books. I published a romance novella under a pen name, so I'm really curious to compare notes with Greg and see because Greg has a number of pen names and writes in a number of genres. So I'm curious what he has to say about that. I'm going to see because I don't see him showing up. No, he's not here yet. So let's see. Can I find him in any way? No. This is the funny thing, of course, about going on Facebook Live is that there's always the danger of things not necessarily working the way you want them to work. So that's, I can wait for a bit. Thing is, I don't know who's watching. Oh, yes, you are here. That's all right. I should be able to. No, I cannot invite you like this. I'm going to try this, okay? It says adding. Usually you pop up in the corner there. But you didn't. Yes.
There we go.
Oh, this is so yesterday I had somebody and it also didn't work in the normal way, so I had to find out as like a little shortcut. And now this is a new way, and now again a new way of adding somebody. But it worked. Like whatever works is good. Is good for me. Welcome.
Thank you.
So glad that you're here again. So for people watching, of course, I just said your name was Greg Gibb, and they see a different name in the screen. So this is, of course, one of the things we're going to talk about because Cameron D. James is one of your pen names. And I really have no idea whether you want to share any of the other pen names. That's entirely up to you. But yeah, so this is why I wanted to talk with you about this, because you have multiple pen names and you write in multiple genres. So I just really want to hear from you what your experiences are with that. Also because, of
Yeah.
course, like you also have the publishing house. And I'm assuming a lot of, well, I know, of course, like as one of your copywriters, I know that some of the authors have pen names. So I'm also curious what your experiences are with them, in your conversations with them, whether you have conversations with them about that.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah. So actually, before we jump in, I'm having a very weird technological issue on my side. I'm
Oh,
hearing our
what is that?
conversation, but I'm also hearing our conversation 10 seconds ago. So I think I'm listening to the call and participating in the call, and I don't know what to do.
Are you, so you're on your phone, right?
Yes.
And there's no computer nearby.
No.
Oh, because I had that recently that somebody also had their laptop on, and that was very confusing.
Okay.
Um, do you want
It
to try
might be
again?
it might be because I had your video open and then you asked me to join, so I might be listening to it twice. So yeah, let me back out and I'll close the video and then you can invite me back in.
Yeah, but you do have to be watching. That's the thing. You have to be watching. Because if
Hmm.
you're not watching, I cannot see. I cannot invite you. But
Okay.
we can still disconnect and just connect again and see if that solves
Sure.
the issue.
Because right
Because
now
I
it sounds like
know,
I'm in a busy place because I hear
yes,
both of our voices. Yeah.
and I've had that before, and it's you can't concentrate like that.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, so
So
I'm gonna kick you out.
perfect.
If I'm assuming I see an X here, so I'm assuming that's it, and then let's see if we can invite you back in. Okay. Okay, let's see. Because that was the thing, like I did it. Allow viewers to request to be in the broadcast. So I'm going to open that up now. And Greg, you should be able now to ask me whether you can be on. Maybe we can try that one. That's a new thing I haven't tried yet. Let's see if that works. I don't know. There should be a button somewhere that allows you to ask if you want to join. If that doesn't work, I'm going to just try again the way I did just now. But because that's a different way of how I usually add people, I'm quite curious whether that's because whether that's what caused the lag. And I've had that before, and it's you can't really have a conversation like that because you're constantly. Okay, so you're not there yet, so I'm just gonna try again. It works this time.
All right.
Okay. Test, test, test.
I can hear you, and I can only hear you once, so that's good.
Are you sure?
Yeah. No other voices so far.
That's always a relief, right? If the other voices
Yes.
just shut up for a second. Oh,
Yes.
yeah. Okay. So welcome back.
Thank you.
I'm glad it's working out. But this is the thing. Like I remember when I was doing when I did my first because I had one of these conversations with John as well, of course, about his book and the process, the lengthy process that was that. And then we didn't want to test, and then we did test, and it turned like that was for me. Like he didn't hear that, but for me, that was just yeah. So good call on your part that you're just mentioning. So now we figured it out. Okay, so we're good to go?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, so well, where do you want to start? Because I'm assuming there's so much information that you can share with us. So
Sure.
where do you want to start?
We could start with why I originally wrote under a pen name and then why I now have multiple pen names. Would that be helpful?
That's yes,
All
because
right.
that's like I'm assuming so many people have different reasons for having a pen name.
Mm-hmm.
So I am really curious for you, and of course it depends on genre. It
Yeah.
depends on the genre why you have a pen name. So this is exactly why I want to talk about romance and erotic in particular, because that's of course
Mm-hmm.
it's an interesting genre. So yeah, tell me why did you first started writing out under a pen name?
Yeah, so originally when I got into gay erotic romance, I did write under a pen name because I didn't want my real name associated with it. Um, Partly, I guess, because of embarrassment that I'm writing something so sex-based and romance-based when that's not something I have been known for before that. Before getting into this genre, I tried to write science fiction mostly, a little bit of thriller
Hmm.
as well. Um, so when I got into erotic romance, I decided I'm going to do it under a pen name because what I thought at the time back then was I'm going to save my real name for when I publish my science fiction. And so I wanted those two things very separate.
Hmm.
Um, as I continued to write and publish and self-publish under my pen name, I actually really grew to enjoy having a pen name. It allowed me to choose to reveal what I do to who I want. So if I had a friend that would
Hmm.
randomly Google my real name, they wouldn't find any of my writing. So I got to choose who I wanted to tell. And I've come to really enjoy that so that to the point where when I go back to my science fiction or thriller writing, I will write that under a pen name. It'll be a different pen name because I want to keep the two genres separate because they're different audiences. But I do enjoy how a pen name allows for some distance between myself and my product, like my result, my book that I write. I find that also helps a little bit with bad reviews, because all authors get bad reviews. Every book gets a bad review. Even the best books get bad reviews. And so when I found that since I'm under a pen name, I don't feel so much like I'm personally being attacked. It's my book that's being criticized, not me. And so that separation has allowed for that thick skin to grow that you need if you're going to write and publish books. So from there, as I mentioned, I have multiple pen names. I decided, so Cameron D. James is gay erotic romance. Did decide to explore some erotica, so just the sex stuff without any of the, or very little of the romance in the story and the characters, just for the people that want a quick and dirty short story. And so I created a new pen name for that because people who read Cameron D. James, I assume they want the fuller story that comes with it. They want the romance, they want the characters, they want the plot. And so if I were to publish my erotica under the same name, these fans would read that book and they would be quite disappointed because it didn't have any of the character development or the plot or the romance or the bigger story. It was just sort of the dirty scenes. And conversely, fans of the erotica, they might not really want the romance story. They want just, you know, a 10, 15 page enjoyable story. They don't want a full-size novel that has all of this other stuff in it. So I found that really helped to separate audiences so that there's not that crossover. And then recently I got into gay young adult romance, and I created a new pen name for that because my Cameron D. James pen name does have some adult content, both in the books and then on social media. And if I had a young reader reading my young adult book, I didn't really want them to stumble into something that's inappropriate because they assume, oh, he writes young adult fiction, he's going to be an awesome person to follow on Twitter. So I did create a new pen name for that, but it's clearly linked.
Which is true, but like for 18 plus, right?
Yeah. So my young adult pen name is Dylan James. So it's sort of like a sub-name of this pen name. So that if someone wants to read both types of books, like it's easy to find, but it's still separate for the people that want it to be separate. So my young adult pen name on Twitter, for example, there's nothing even remotely close to 18 plus. So if someone likes just my young adult stuff, they can follow me on Twitter under that pen name and have a safe experience. Yeah,
it's very clean space.
It is, yes.
So that's actually quite interesting because then at that point, you're not religiously separating the two. You are giving your readers the option by having names that are connected. But are you then saying that by having a different name, a slightly different name on the cover, that should be a warning that it is a different type of book?
I would hope so. There's always going to be some readers who don't make that distinction when they're buying something. But for the most part, if they see Dylan James, that should mean it's young adult oriented. And if they see Cameron D. James, they should know that that is more adult.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm gonna do with my nonfiction and my fantasy fiction. Is I'm gonna use my full name, so my second name written out for my fantasy fiction, and then I'm gonna use the Mariëlle S. Smith for my nonfiction. So it's not entirely people are allowed to know I'm the same person. But they should know there are two different ways. There are two different branches, basically.
There's an author I enjoy reading that writes gay erotic romance and straight erotic romance, and she knows that she has a lot of readers that read both romantic pairings. So she has different pen names for both, but they're just slightly different. So I think for the gay erotic romance, for her first name, she uses her initials, and for her straight erotic romance, she uses her full name for her first name. So someone looking at them can clearly see that it's the same author, but that slight distinction in how the first name is written is the clue that, okay, it's this type of book or it's that type of book.
Yeah, it's almost like for the people who are very much into self-publishing and who follow Joanna Penn of the Creative Pen. She has everybody who follows her knows that you have Joanna Penn and you have JF Penn, and JF Penn is the fiction that's made up. I'm not even sure whether the F is an actual initial, whether she's doing the J.K. Rowling thing there. And then Joanna Penn is her. That's her. That's really her, like her nonfiction. So yeah, I totally get that because it's okay if people make that connection, but you do want to give them the signal that be aware that these are two different. Yeah, so the only thing I have a radically different pen name for is the romance, the lesbian romance that I just published with Sheena. And it's funny because at the beginning, when I first showed something of that on Instagram, I had somebody go like, but it's a pen name. Like, are you outing yourself as a... I'm like, yeah, well, it's not. Okay, we didn't do the pen name because we're embarrassed about what we're writing. We have the pen name, and of course what we write is sexy romance, so there is sex in it, but it's not erotica. So in terms of, because I also know there are quite a few romance writers who are just embarrassed that they write romance, right? That they write like these lovey-dovey happy ending stories and they really don't want their own name attached to this. That was not an issue for us because we really enjoyed writing these stories. I mean, romance writers as well, of course. But for us, it's because I write, like my actual work is like the urban fantasy, the young adult urban fantasy stuff. And I have like many other young adult stories, also non-fantasy, like on the back burner. So that is really my genre. Of course, young adult is not a genre, but it's my category, and I want to explore more in that category. And Sheena, of course, Sheena writes more like literary, like actual literature. So we were like, it's too broad. Like we did think of that at the beginning. Like, should we just put one of our names on it? Because marketing wise, the less pen names you have, and I do want to talk to you about that. Like the less pen names you have, it's easier for marketing because otherwise you're just doing all the work. But then we were like, no, because even though the stuff she writes does have that LGBTQIA plus lens. It's not the same genre. It's a completely different story. It's not it's actual literature. So yeah, we were like, we have to make up someone else, and of course, like everybody now knows that that's us, and that's not a problem for us. But yeah, we did want a different name on that precisely because of that reason, because it's different than what we usually write people.
Yeah, so
Don't
like
expect, yeah.
I do admit that originally I did pick a pen name because I was a little bit embarrassed that I was switching to this genre. To give some fuller context for some of your viewers here, so I started writing gay erotic romance within about, I want to say within about 6 months of coming out as gay. So like this whole being gay thing was completely new to me. I wasn't even out to everybody, and so to suddenly write in this genre, and then if I were to use my real name and it might explode among my friends on Facebook, not all of whom knew I was gay, that was a little bit more than I could handle at that moment. So that was partly the reason why I chose a pen name.
That.
Yeah, but now at this point, like, I really don't care who knows. Like, you introduced me as Craig Gibb. A lot of people who know me as Cameron know that is a pen name for someone named Craig. Almost all of my friends know that I write in this genre, so like that embarrassment factor isn't there at all anymore. And I really enjoy that I write this genre, and I enjoy the types of questions that people have when they find out that I write this genre.
I do want to ask one, but because I do want to know what kind of questions those are. But first thing I'm curious about is would you say that then, like when you started this out, and maybe the same goes for me and Sheena as well, because of course when we started writing this, like we had no idea whether we were going to enjoy this, right? because this
Hmm.
is like romance. It's not a genre that we usually write in, but we both felt the need to do something together. Um, this was an interest that we have in common. So yeah, we were like, let's just try this. So maybe for us both, it was like if we have a pen name, it's a safe space.
Hmm.
But yeah, once we got through the first round of beta readers, it was quite obvious that we were doing something good, right? It was the effort was rewarded.
Hmm.
So I think for us is knowing that the people that already read the books as we were writing them, that they enjoyed it so much. I think that also makes it easier to just go like, yeah, this is actually me because so many people already enjoyed this book. Like there's nothing to be ashamed of. So many
Hmm.
people, and I just posted that this morning on Instagram as well. Like one of the funniest experiences for me writing in this genre is that most of our beta readers, even our ARC team, they don't actually write a lot of romance,
Hmm.
but they're queer, and I wanted them to read it because I
Yeah.
didn't want to write just another romance and perpetuate like harmful cliches and stereotypes, because like representation, that's kind of my thing. It's one of the reasons why we didn't decide to just write a normal, a regular romance, but where we decided let's do an LGBT one. Um, because that's where the representation still lacks. And so yeah, we picked for our beta readers, we picked people. Most of them are lesbians, bisexuals, or are some unlabeled, somewhere in that
Hmm.
spectrum, and they read all kinds of things. But we just wanted to make sure that they were doing the right thing. So that was the most rewarding. That even people who don't usually write romance go like, "This is really fun. When do I get the next book?" I'm like, "Oh, that's exactly what you want because you're doing something right, and you're writing
Hmm.
a fun book that people want to, read the next book in." So yeah, that was for
Hmm.
me a very interesting experience, and I think that's part of why it's so easy for me to go like, "Yeah, that's us," because like the
Yeah.
experience so far has been. I mean, and sure, like once I get that first 1-star review, that's gonna be tough, but not yet. Hey,
Yeah.
you said something about the questions that you
Hmm.
get asked when people. So
Yeah. So
can you share a little bit?
before they even get to the questions, there's all of this very awkward embarrassment on behalf of the person that's asking questions because
Hmm.
I'm not really sure what they think I do when I say I'm writing gay erotic romance that has some sex scenes in it. I think they think I'm doing some rather naughty things at the computer, but really all I'm doing there is I'm sitting there and typing, as you very well know, and
Hmm.
pretty much any
Hmm.
listener to this call is a writer. They know that like even the sexiest thing you're writing, you're just sitting at a keyboard writing, drinking coffee, trying to stay awake, trying to keep the cats off the keyboard, and that's basically all I
Yes.
do. But the questions
It's
I'm
the
most
same for
often,
writing like murder scenes, right?
yeah, exactly. You're not doing
Yes, but
anything
when you
different.
say I write murder scenes, people don't seem to go like, so what do you do at night? But when
Yeah,
it's about sex, there's like this huge taboo, and people go like, oh, that's a little weird. Yeah.
yeah. And then they want to know, is it like on an autobiography? Like, is it my sex life that I'm turning into fiction? Or they want to know, like, where do I get my ideas? So I think a lot of people think I
Oh.
have this really taboo lifestyle, which I don't. But your murder example is a good example because if
Yeah.
someone writes murder and murder mystery, they're not going to ask, so is that based on somebody that you killed? Or do you hang
That's
out with
right.
murderers often? Yeah. And but I think because it's sex, it's just this taboo thing that people have a very awkward reaction to.
Yeah, yeah, that's actually I've had the same because I do have people go like, so how did you two came up with this idea?
Hmm.
Well, I created a whole fantasy world out of nothing.
Yeah.
Like I have quite a vivid imagination. But yeah, it is. I think it's a taboo thing. It's the whole like it's this whole who wrote about that? I think Michel Foucault is like the whole Victorian mindset that like we all we ever want to think about and talk about is sex, but it's the last thing we want to talk and think about because ooh, yeah. So
Hmm.
it's a yeah. I think that's a very much a Western mindset thingy. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
so
And
that's
then
one of the questions that you
also,
get.
yeah, also like just related to all of that, there are a lot of women who write erotic romance, so gay erotic romance.
Yes.
And I'm sure that they don't get the questions of, is this based on your sex life? Because the characters are a different gender. But if you're a man writing this type of stuff, and I would imagine if you're a female writing straight romance or lesbian romance or bi romance, I'm sure that that author would get all sorts of questions about, is this based on your life? Or you must really like having sex a lot. And all sorts of awkward comments and questions like that. Mm-hmm.
It's so good that you mentioned that. Yeah, one of my clients, she writes and I'm confident nobody ever asked her the question. I'm sure she get the question, why does this interest you?
Oh yeah, I have no doubt.
Yeah, like but there's nobody who goes like, so what do you do in the small hours? I sleep, for her next to her husband, and then she wakes up at like 4 or 5 to write the next book. That's how, I mean, we're writers, right? That's how exciting our life is. Like we go to bed as early as we can, we get up as early as we can, and we write the words. We don't have time for all the shenanigans that our characters are up to.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. No. Okay, so anything else that you're like, this is such a question that I always get, and it's probably just because it's this genre that I'm writing in.
Not really. They're usually all variations on, is this based on your sex life? With my first novel in particular, I often get the question like, is this the story of how you and your husband met? And I can tell you it's not. My husband and I did not meet in a bathroom stall at a university and doing certain things in the bathroom stall. That is 100% fiction.
Oh, but I'm just like, I know your husband, and I'm like, for me, that would never be a question. And I've read your stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not once have I thought, oh, I did not know that was one of your day jobs at one point. That just doesn't occur to me. But this is the thing, like I know both of you, and I'm just like, yeah, no,
Mm-hmm.
no. Yeah, oh, that's fun. Yeah, oh, yeah, that's funny. But I can also imagine your reaction go like, no, this is not how we met. No.
Yeah, not at
That's
all.
amazing. Yeah, I think it says a lot about how and I think we actually talked about this. You remember, not last February, but the year before that. I cannot believe it's been that long. But we did these episodes on romance and erotica for the Right
The
podcast.
Right.
Yeah, the Right. It's so easy when you see it written, so difficult when you have to pronounce that. And I think we had the same thing. Is that there's such a disconnect between what we experience in our own lives and the things that we read, and that confuses people a lot because they expect, and also because certain genres in certain particular subgenres in romance are so popular. You have books like 50 Shades of Grey. Hollywood is doing a lot to ruin it for a lot of us. That there's such a disconnect between what we are doing, at home, and what we think we should be doing at home. That I think could that be one of the reasons why people ask these questions, like, is this really how it should, like how it works?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that comes up a lot with readers of romance, erotic romance, and erotica, because what we write is basically a type of fantasy. We're writing a fantasy about love or a fantasy about sex. And I think a lot of people who are reading it, or maybe not a lot, but definitely some people who are reading it, start to look at what they're reading and then compare it to their own lived experience. So particularly when it comes to the more erotic genres, you get the taboo scenes, you get the people who have like a super intense sex life that leaves no room for anything else, like no hobbies. And a reader might compare themselves to the character and be like, I'm not having the type of sex life I think I'm supposed to be having, because this character is really living it up. They have like so much going on in their romantic life And here I am, I'm in a stable relationship, yes, but I don't have what this character has. And I think that can throw some readers off, unfortunately. Yeah.
Because that's the thing, right? And it reminds me of, I remember the first draft that we sent out of this book that we just published last week. One of the beta readers, she came back to us, and she was just watching as well. She came back to me and she said, because we had, like, it's a family holiday thing, that's how it starts out. So they have this, they're there with the whole family, right? Like, so it's the main character with her parents and her siblings, and then their kids. So there were quite a few kid scenes in the book. And then that beta reader said, and I think that's how it should, like, books like this should be read. She said, I'm reading if I should be reading this for my escape, right? My escape from my normal,
Yes.
stable, romantic life. And like to get away from, being a mother and being hassled by my kids all the time. I don't want that. I don't want kids in my romantic book, in my sexy romance all the time. So if I were you, I would like dial down on the kid scenes. And first of all, she had a really good point, and we did that. Like we cut most of that, and I think it makes for a much faster book. But she read it the right way. She was like, if I am supposed to read this as an escape from my regular day-to-day life, and I mean, I know her, we're friends. She's a happy person. She loves her husband. She loves her kids. But she's like, so she wasn't reading it as this is what I should aspire to. No, she understands it as this is just a fantasy that I'm going to allow myself for the next few pages. And after that, I'll return to my life and I'll be happy with what I have. And I think that's the way you should be reading it. Like, it's just an escape. It's like when I'm sick, like I tend to watch like stuff like Downton Abbey and Pride and Prejudice, When I'm really sick, I just want to escape in a different world that has nothing to do with the modern world. I do realize that's not the real world, and after it's finished, I'm back in my own world, right? And I think like that's how we should be reading these genres as well. Just a nice escape,
Yeah.
and then we go back to reality. Yeah.
Yeah, because reading is a form of entertainment, just like TV and movies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we can see it when we read like Game of Thrones or Harry Potter or whatever genre. We see that like that is an escape. So it's the sex thing is difficult for people
hmm hmm
to separate.
Especially,
That is a thing. Yeah.
yeah, it's especially difficult, I think, when a reader first discovers a genre, and that's sometimes I think where that mental conflict comes up of like, I'm reading this and I feel like I'm not measuring up. But once a reader dives more into the genre, reads some more stuff, then they get a better sense that this is just entertainment, it's just escape, and it doesn't mean anything about me and my personal life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, yeah, and I think of course because like the more you read in it, you see that the stories they all, I mean, there's rules to them, right? So they all hit the same notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, like I mean, we bend the rules where we can, right? But I mean, that's what I do at least. I always love to mess a little bit with the system. But I think that's a good point. Is like but yeah, I think it's very important thing, and that's why I love talking about that. Back when we were doing those episodes, is that it's such a shame that it becomes a little warped, like how we think about sex and how that affects like everything, like the structure we live in, and it also influences the stuff we think we should be writing, the stuff we think we should be reading, and that's one of the things is that I just had a client. And she also writes romance, by the way. She's in my 3-month program. And she was struggling. She sent me an email. She was struggling with that she wants to say so much in her work, but like she didn't want to do like this soapbox thing, right? Stephen King says, don't do that. Like don't preach. So I suggested, like I just gave the example of our own romance. I said, well, you can say a lot of things without being too explicit. So for example, like me and Sheena, we're all about consent. Right, the romance genres that mess with that, like no, that's not like we're not into that. So instead of having a scene in which they talk about consent, we just made sure that everything that happens in the book clearly has consent. So you can do
Hmm.
it implicitly. You don't have to do it explicitly. Um, so yeah, I was thinking that's also that's a way of like making your point without
Yeah, like
yeah,
quite often writers of erotic romance or gay erotic romance, one of the things that they want to do in their books is always depict proper safer sex techniques, like always
yes,
use a condom. Um, and the reason most authors say for why they do that is because if there is a reader who's reading it, they pick up that message and they choose to use safer sex practices in their own
yeah,
personal life. And that's a really good goal. But when an author writes a page and a half, 2, 3 pages about the importance of safer sex in the middle of their book, it really breaks from the flow of the story.
yeah,
But like you say, if you just work it in like how you work in the consent. So anytime you have a sex scene, like there are proper safer sex practices used in the sex scene. There might be a couple comments about it during the sex scene, like, did you bring a condom? Or,
yeah,
uh, we're not monogamous, so make sure you have a condom. Like, just those little snippets here and there, that really gets your point across. So if an author wants to make that part of their goal with writing, there are ways to do it very
yeah.
effectively so that that message is picked up, but without breaking the story, so that there's a little bit of a monologue.
Yeah, or like just this conversation between friends, like, oh, you picked up this new lover. Are you practicing safe sex? You don't have to.
Yes.
You don't have to
Yes.
do it like that. You can do it implicitly, but still making that very important point. Yeah, that's exactly the point I tried to bring across to her. Is like you can be implicit about everything. Just make it
Mm-hmm.
happen in the world you're creating without question, without weirdness, as if it's the most normal thing, that this is how it should go. And then people will pick up
Yeah.
on that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And when I read books, I notice when there is explicit consent in the sex scenes. And I actually find that really interesting because it just slipped in there very casually, or it feels very casually. And I notice it right away. And I actually really enjoy seeing that sort of thing because it's the right message. But also, as a
yeah,
reader, I find those intimate scenes more um, enjoyable if I know for sure that there's full consent and both
yeah.
characters really want this to happen. So for some people, the idea of always got to make sure there's consent, that sounds like a little bit of a chore, but it can actually heighten the scene and make it more enjoyable.
Yeah, and that's exactly, I think, because of course, like now with the whole like hashtag Me Too thing, and I'm so glad that that is not going away, because I was
Mm-hmm.
so afraid that that was one of those things that would blow over. But we're still going strong, and it's
Mm-hmm.
it's time. It's so time for those old structures, for both women and men's sake, that those structures like are just we have to rebuild that from the beginning. But yeah, it's like so many men, straight men, mostly I would say, are complaining that so how do you do consent? Like, do you have to have like this contract and do you have to sign? And I'm like, no, 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 that's not how it goes. And I think scenes like that can show people as well, like, oh, so this is how you have that little conversation, and it doesn't have to ruin the intimate moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to
Yeah,
do it
like
right. Yeah.
I recently read a biker romance, like a motorcycle romance. So that's got like the
Hmm.
really gruff, muscular alpha guy who
Is
your
that the one
typical
I'm
bad
doing the
boy
copywriting
tattoos.
for?
Yes, yes, that one.
Yes, okay, yeah.
You
Yeah.
Belong to Me, Hell's Vipers, book one.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and in that sort of situation with those sorts of characters, you might not expect consent, but it's very clear that there is consent because even though he's this alpha like guy that just sort of takes what he wants, he always makes sure that his love interest is completely on board and that she wants everything as well because he wants to treat her right. And it doesn't make him feel any less of an alpha male. So he still has
Yeah.
all of that alpha male energy that readers of that subgenre really want. but at the same time, you get the consent that a lot of readers also want.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And I think for toxic masculinity, like this is
Hmm.
how, like writing a book like this is showing how you can be like a man, like a real, like the virile type of man,
Hmm.
but that you can actually, that there's actually pride. Like you can be proud of the fact that you are treating your lover right, right? You don't have,
Hmm.
it's not, there's no pride to be had by treating your love interest in the wrong way. Like I think, and stuff like romance like this, and I know, like romance is one of those genres that is often, you know, a little bit frowned upon, even though
Hmm.
it's, I think it makes the most money
It makes the
of
most
all
money, and I also
genres.
find it's one of the hardest genres to write because readers have very clear expectations, and you have to make sure you meet those expectations. So it's very hard to write. But like you say, it's looked down
Yeah,
upon by
yeah.
so many people.
Yeah, but most of these people, of course, secretly read it. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
hmm But I think like books like this, so I'm really glad that I'm working on the copy for that, is that they show that you can be both.
Hmm.
It's not either or. You can be both this alpha male and actually, you know, become actually more of an alpha male because you show the world that you treat your woman right.
Hmm.
So that is very
Absolutely.
interesting. Yeah, that is, I mean, yeah, yes, I'm glad that books like that, I mean, that for me is a sure sign that that this whole movement that we have now, like moving on from the 50 Shades of Grey, that there are at least writers who go like, no, 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 no. This is not how we should be doing things. We need to do things differently, right?
Hmm.
So I'm glad that people are speaking up about that and are publishing their work. Okay, back to the pen names. One of the things I really want to discuss is because you and I know this from being in all those self-publishing groups on Facebook and elsewhere, is that a lot of people often go like, do I want a pen name because I'm self-publishing, so I already have to do all my marketing myself? The more pen names I have, like the more work the marketing is gonna be. Isn't it just easier if I just write my one genre and totally different genre under the same name? And of course, we would say, don't do that because you make promises to your readers. So from page one, your first book, you make a promise to your reader. And if you write a book with the same name, and it's, you can do genre crossovers, but if you do like a completely different genre, your reader will go like, what?
Hmm.
You don't want that. You don't want your reader to go like that. So you have multiple genres, because I'm already worried about having three names on my book and future books. How does that work? Because I know, and I know especially amongst you and your husband, there are multiple pen names. Like you have
Hmm.
this whole network, it seems to me sometimes. So how do you deal with that? Like how do you do that marketing wise?
Yeah, so it comes down to making appropriate decisions for how to market for each pen name. Um, so particularly with the more erotic end of the spectrum, sorry, particularly with the more erotic end of the spectrum, readers tend to be okay with more direct marketing. Whereas if you're on the less erotic end of the spectrum, or if you're not in romance at all, readers or like social media followers tend to have a more negative view of more direct marketing. So you do have to
That's
understand
interesting.
what is allowed for your genre, and that's very loose because you can break the rules, and if it works for you, it works for you. And you also need to know which social media platforms are worth your time to invest in. So for all of my pen names, I have Twitter. I find Twitter to be
Mm-hmm.
the most effective place for all of my marketing. For some pen names, I have some other things. So for Cameron D. James, I have a Facebook page. And for my young adult pen name, Dylan James, I have Instagram. But everything else is just Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now, for all of my pen names except for Dylan, so it's except for my young adult pen name, so my Cameron D. James erotic romance pen name, and then my two other pen names that do just erotica, I use a program called, used to be called Tweet Jukebox, and now I think it's called Social Jukebox. And what you do is you program it with a bunch of tweets, and it just spits them out at random intervals. So for those pen names, I've got these regular marketing tweets that go out quite often. And for each pen name, I choose how much I want to be engaged with them. So for my more erotic pen names, I don't do a lot of engagement with readers and followers. I just let it spit out the promotional tweets, and I leave it at that. And I seem to be doing fine. And I think it's because when you're writing just erotica, that's where you get a lot of the readers that don't really want other people knowing that they read erotica. So they don't necessarily want to interact with an author on Twitter. So in that case, it's more okay to just send out these promotional tweets and not really engage with your audience, because most of your audience doesn't necessarily want to engage with you in return. Whereas my Cameron D. James pen name, that's my main pen name. That's where I invest a lot of my time and my energy. I have my regular tweets going out, but since it's less, while it is erotic, it's not the pure erotica. It's a little bit more on the romance side. The audience generally doesn't like repeated, frequent, constant marketing. So I make sure that when I go on there, I scroll through my feed. I will respond to people's tweets. I might post a tweet now and then just about what I'm doing or a picture of what I'm doing, all within my comfort zone. So it's only recently that I've started associating my face with Cameron D. James. So when I would share pictures before, it might be a picture of my cat that doesn't have me in it, or if I'm on a walk, I might take a picture of where I'm walking without having me in the picture. And so with the Cameron D. James pen name, people tend to enjoy the personal side of my Twitter interactions, and they perhaps tolerate the marketing that regularly goes out. And then with something like Dylan James, my pen name, I may eventually set up Social Jukebox so it sends out the regular promotional tweets, but right now I only have one book under that pen name, so I don't want to flog that book 5 times a day every single day. So I tweet about it maybe once every couple of weeks. And I try to go in there every couple of days, and I might respond to some tweets like I do with Cameron D. James, or I might post a picture or talk about something just for some of that reader engagement. So yeah, you need to figure out what makes sense for you in terms of the books that you publish. So if you have a lot of books, then you probably want to do a lot of content marketing. If you only have a couple books, you probably want to do a little bit more infrequent marketing. And it also comes down to what do you want from social media? So for my more erotic pen names, all I want to do is just sell the books, and I want to get the tweets in front of as many people as possible. So that's why I don't mind just promotional tweet, promotion, and very little other things. Whereas with Cameron D. James, like I want to promote the books, but that pen name is built a little bit more around me. So I want to make sure that I'm on that social media platform and talking about me, so that the readers get a sense of who I am. Now that's all Twitter. For Facebook, although I have a Facebook page for Cameron D. James, I don't really use it that much. I basically post when I have a new release, and then if I have a blog post, I'll just post the link on Facebook, and that's about all I do. I personally find that I don't get a lot of interaction on Facebook, so it's not really where I want to spend my time. Other people have tons of interactions on Facebook, so it makes sense that that would be where they spend most of their time. And then for Dylan James, my young adult pen name, I also have Instagram, as I mentioned. Instagram has taken a little bit of time to get into and to figure it out, because I don't really use I haven't really used Instagram before. I've used Instagram in about the last year and a half. So I don't have this long history of using it like with Facebook and Twitter. Like I've used them for quite a while. I'm comfortable with them. But if any of your listeners are looking at social media and wondering where they should start up, everyone will have an opinion, and they'll say you definitely have to have this, or you definitely have to have that. My advice is always pick the one that you want to be on. So if you enjoy Facebook, do Facebook. If you enjoy Twitter, do Twitter. If you enjoy Pinterest, do Pinterest. Don't do something that you don't enjoy. Don't do anything that's really a chore for you. And then in terms of how you market your book, if you are comfortable being seen as a marketing machine, then you can just promote nonstop. If you're not comfortable with that, or if you want to also use that social media platform as sort of a showcase of you and who you are, then do less promotion and more personal stuff. And then people get to know you, and then they want to check out your book. So either way works. Like nonstop promotion, you'll get people clicking on links and looking at things. If you do less promotion but more personal stuff, you'll get people that get to know you, and then they check out their books because they know you. So there really is no one way to do it. And no matter what you do, there's going to be people that tell you you're doing it wrong, and there's people that tell you you're doing it right. And it's just whatever works for you, works for you. Because I've seen people do things that I would never do, but it's led to them having success. And I've seen people try to do exactly what I do, and they get nowhere with it. So there's no formula.
It's a very personal thing. Yeah.
It is.
So basically what you're saying, it's both trial and error. And next to it being trial and error, it is just pick the thing. So for instance, for me, like I've tried Twitter, it's not my thing.
Yeah.
Instagram, I think I posted my 1100th picture.
Wow.
But I've been on Instagram since the past decade or so. And I've only recently started using it like for my business and not for my writing, although I do post about my writing, but it's mostly business with personal. There are a lot of cat pictures on there because I volunteer now for the local cat charity. So it's a combination of me marketing my services, the books I'm working on, the cats that I'm looking after, sunset, palm trees. I mean, of course, like I live on this gorgeous exotic island right now, so I have to share with people what that looks like. But yes, for me, Instagram really is the thing, and then Facebook a little bit. But that's it. That's so I've tried Twitter. I just don't get it. So what you're basically, and I do love Pinterest as well. So what you're basically saying is like pick the things that you love and rather do that well.
Yes.
Than feel the need to do everything. Yeah.
Yeah, like I've tried Pinterest a couple times, and I just can't get into it. I can't figure it out. Like I know the basics, but I can't get it to work for me. So I've abandoned it because I can't do it. But if it's something that you are good at, or more importantly that you enjoy, then yeah, definitely that is where you should be spending your time.
Yeah, I love it. Like for me, it's like when I have to look up something, I first look it up on Instagram. Like I prefer looking it up on Instagram. Not Instagram, sorry, Pinterest. I prefer looking it up on Pinterest than looking it up on Google.
And that
So
would
for me,
never
it's such
occur to
a
me.
yeah, and that's such for me, it's such a go-to. And I don't use it as much. Like I use it personally. I don't use it as much for my editing and my coaching business. I do have a profile, but I'm not using it as much for that at the moment. But yeah, I definitely want to do that for the pen name as well. Because I do the same. Like I follow authors that I really am into. Like I follow their Pinterest, and they have like boards with like pictures of inspiration and poems that they collect that reminds them of the characters and scenery that I just love that stuff. Like it's very visual. So yeah, I definitely want to do that for the pen name as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like just pick what you enjoy doing anyway.
Yeah, like Pinterest can be really good for, like it can be good for anybody that enjoys it, but it can be particularly good for if you are known for something. So if you write Scottish Highland romance, then you've got all these pictures of people in kilts, you've got castles, you've got all sorts of things, and people who like that stuff automatically start following you because they want more of that stuff. Or James Rollins, thriller writer, has Pinterest. I've checked it out, and so for every book that he writes, he has a board that has pictures of a lot of the things that he's mentioned in his books, because he builds a lot of his books around history and geography and stuff like that. So you can actually go to Pinterest
awesome stuff.
and see all the things that he's talking about in his book, and that can be a really effective marketing tool for people that write those types of books as well.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like for the super fans, like I, for example, follow Cassandra Clare, who writes the Shadowhunter series. And like she does the same, like for every series, every trilogy she has, like she has a board, and then you can see her collecting images, and you go like, and when she's writing a book, you're like, I bet this is that character, and that is that character, and that is that character. And I do the same, like it's not on the name yet that I'm gonna publish the book in eventually, but I use this, and I say that to my clients as well if they get stuck. Like make a Pinterest board and collect like imagery or just people or bits of songs or poems that remind you. So I have these boards on my own personal Pinterest for the novels that I'm writing anyway. So as soon as I get that urban fantasy out, I will turn that into like a proper boards for like potential readers, because I use it as that's the thing. I recently saw that somewhere, like this meme on Facebook, like if failure and success didn't mean a thing, what would you still be doing anyway? And I think this is the thing.
That's a good
If
thing.
you're on Twitter anyway, yeah, if you're on Twitter anyway, if you're on Pinterest anyway, if you're on Facebook anyway, if you're on Instagram anyway, just use that. If you're gonna be on there anyway, just use that and do that right. That's basically the idea. I would say, yeah. Okay, anything else? Because we've we're almost on the hour.
Okay.
Um, So this is the thing for me, is like I never prepare. Like yesterday I had a conversation as well for my giveaway, and like this with this person who was actually the beta reader who said, could you drop the kids in the book because I'm trying to have an escape here. I had a talk with her yesterday, and we always go in like this, and the good thing is that like topics come up that we didn't expect, and that can be really good. Like I think we talked about a lot of things that I didn't expect, but that doesn't mean it's less valuable for people who write in these genres. But that's not like if I'd made a list, that it would be very compact and very like tick all the boxes. And now at least we have the freedom. But of course, when I look at my microwave over there, I'm like, oh, it's almost been an hour. So is there anything else that that you want to share? Anything
Sure.
outside like my
So this is
perspective?
not from my personal experience, but I know that there are some people who choose to use pen names because um, it's not safe for them to use their real name for publishing, and that tends to be true of romance,
Yeah,
erotica, or if you're writing LGBTQ fiction.
yeah, I get that.
So a lot of people decide to use pen names so that it's not associated with their real life at all, so that their family don't find out, their church doesn't find out, their job doesn't find out. And that is very much a legitimate
Depending on where they
concern.
are, the government doesn't find out.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
just
And so
realized
that's
that me,
a
like I can
concern.
revel, yeah, like me being able to revel in the pen name that I have, it's such a privilege. Because even though
Hmm.
like I'm now living in a not so gay friendly country,
Hmm.
which is very pain, that has become painfully obvious to me over the past couple of months. I'm still in Europe. I'm still protected by European law. And yeah, it's a privilege that I can tell the world, yes, I'm writing lesbian romance, so on.
Hmm.
But yeah, so that is,
Hmm.
I'm aware that's a huge privilege to be able to have a pen name just because I want to, not because I have to. Yeah. So go on. I just
Hmm.
wanted to say, like, I'm very aware of the fact that
Yeah,
we can talk about this because of where we are in
yeah,
the world.
yeah. And so I think a lot of people who choose to use a pen name for that reason are understandably very concerned about someone leaking their real identity,
Hmm.
and then being outed for it. So if one of your listeners is in that situation, the only trick is never give out any identifying information. The only exception is if you are self-publishing, Amazon, Smashword, Draft2Digital, all those places, they need your real name for the tax information and for paying you, but they will never leak your real name anywhere, because if they do, they'd be in huge trouble for doing so legally, and then also authors wouldn't trust them, so they would lose all their business. So you really shouldn't be concerned about Amazon leaking who you are. Um, and if you sign on with a publishing company, they would need to know your real name for a contract, but similarly, they would never give out that real name because they'd be in huge trouble
Yeah.
for doing so. So the only thing is, if you're interacting with anybody on Twitter, other forms of social media. Don't give out anything personally identifiable, even if you feel that you can trust that person, because sometimes that person might not actually be trustworthy, or if you have a falling out with that person, they might decide to reveal information about you as a form of revenge. So when you are, if you're using a pen name for personal safety reasons, when you're interacting on social media or anything like that, always act as your pen name. Don't reveal any sort of personal information whatsoever. The only place you should do that, like I said, is Amazon, Smashwords, your publisher, people that legally need to know your real name.
Yeah, oh, that's really good advice. Yeah, and that was just so for people like I did that recently. Like I was on a blog as an interview, and there was this Q&A. So I had to make up the pen name, but and this was like a fun interview. It was really geeky questions like what is your Harry Potter house, and would you prefer Star Wars or Star Trek, stuff like that. So that's very fun, but still, I think as we make our main characters, like if you're in a situation like this, it absolutely is worth the effort to really create your persona. So ask yourself, like, get one of those 100 questions you should ask your main character from Pinterest or Google, and just like write those answers down for the pen name you're writing or if the pen name you're creating, so that when you are in a situation that people ask you particular questions, you actually have an answer prepared, because like your main characters, like your pen name becomes this rounded person, this rounded persona. I think that's very helpful if you actually know that, like I said, like I have the privilege that I don't need to separate the two. And the same goes for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you are in that situation, it really pays off if you create an actual rounded persona, and that you have like a list of questions that you can go back to if people start asking you things. You're like, that gets it's a little close to home.
Yeah, and the more you
Just to be
invest
prepared,
the more you invest in making sure that your pen name persona feels real, the less people will suspect that it's a pen name, and the less that people will dig for information. So it is worth your time to invest in creating your persona if you have reasons for safety type reasons for creating one.
Oh, this is great. Yeah, I love this advice. Yeah, this is the thing that's like this would be absolutely one of my blind spots. Not thinking about, but like I said, like you, of course, you work with multiple people as well who have pen names, and of course, I don't talk to these people. I just work I work behind the scenes on the copy of their books. So I don't actually converse with them about their reasons why. So I'm sure that you had conversations with people like this who are like,
yeah, I've had those conversations a few times over the
really,
years, sometimes with people that I publish, and then just also interacting with people on Twitter. Like a few people have chosen to reveal that they are not who they like, that they have a pen name, so that that's not really who they are. And there's a lot of trust that they've given me in doing so. So like I always make sure that I 100% respect that privacy and that confidence that they've given me. But so there are quite a few people that have pen names for that reason.
yeah. See, So really, thank you for sharing that, because like I said, like we all have our blind spots. This is one of mine. I wouldn't necessarily think of that. But yeah, obviously that makes a lot of sense. So because like we're over the hour now, do you want to talk a little bit? Because of course, like I'm assuming most of our, and of course I will put this up on YouTube, so most of our listeners and future audience will be romance and erotica writers. Do you want to say a little bit about Deep Desires Press?
Sure.
Because you have a publishing house.
Yeah. So I'm the publisher at Deep Desires Press, which is a erotic romance, and erotica publisher of all romantic pairings and groupings. So we do straight, lesbian, gay, bisexual. That pretty much covers most of what we have now, but we are open to other things that come our way. mostly novella to novel size. We originally did some short stories, but we've kind of moved away from that. You can find out more at deepdesirespress.com or follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and we have an almost never updated Pinterest board because, as I said, I'm not really into Pinterest. And you can find all of that at deepdesirespress.com.
Yeah, I'll
And you'll
put the link
definitely
up in
find
the
some books
comments.
there. Yeah, and
Yeah.
we've recently expanded into young adult literature as well. So that's Deep Hearts YA, and that's dhya.deepdesirespress.com. Just go to deepdesirespress.com. There's a young adult link at the top, and you can click that. And that's specifically LGBTQ young adult fiction. So far, we just have the G. So we have one, as of recording this, we have one gay young adult book out, which is mine. We have 2 more coming in about 2 weeks, and we have 3 more coming in the next 4 or 5 months. Unfortunately, they're all gay, and the only reason I say unfortunately is because we want some L, we want some T, we want some B, we want some Q. So we're always looking for books for that as well. So if you're a writer and you want to submit to either Deep Desires or Deep Hearts, just go to deepdesirespress.com and you'll find our submission guidelines there.
Yes, and I will ask you afterwards whether you can give me all those links, and I'll just put them in the description also on YouTube. Just
Sure.
for people who didn't catch up on that, like I'm one of the copywriters for Deep Desires Press, so I know some of the books that are coming out, and I love working with these guys. So yeah, so if you do want to go the traditionally published way, this is a very safe space to do so.
Yeah, and so we are a small publisher, which means that we don't have the same reach as a big traditional publisher. So all of our books are available as ebook format on Amazon, Apple Books, Kobo, Barnes & Noble, and Smashwords. And anything over 25,000 words also goes in paperback, and those are available at Amazon. Since we are a small publisher, unfortunately, that means we can't do mass market print runs and get in physical bookstores. That's really the only place we're not available is physical bookstores. We're available all over the place online.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know that I don't know how that's called. I lost the English. I know that because the thing is why a lot of people choose self-publishing over traditional publishing is because in traditional publishing the royalties are really bad.
Yeah.
And you also you are much more generous with the royalties than most big traditional publishing houses.
Yeah, so small publishers
Yeah.
like us tend to have a higher royalty percentage for authors. The only catch is we don't have as high sales as you might have with a traditional publisher. So under a different pen name, other than all of the other ones I've mentioned, I do have a short story that's published in an anthology by Simon & Schuster, so one of the big 5 publishers. And since it's an anthology, I'm splitting the, I think it's like 8% royalties split among 23 people. So I have like less than 1% royalty share on this book. And it's been out, came out when I was 19, so 17 years. And they gave me an advance of $125. I have not earned out my advance yet. So I will never earn more than that. But the flip side is that book has been purchased over 10,000 times, I think is what the number is. So you do get much larger sales with a traditional publisher, but you get much smaller royalties. So it might kind of balance out in the end.
Yeah. Yeah, but what I would say, because of course I know the behind the scenes, so I know how you communicate, and I know also a lot of people don't want to go the traditional route because they're afraid they lose all sense of control over their books. And I also know that for me, Deep Desires Press is really like the sort of it's somewhere in between because there is still quite a bit of control. Like it's a process, you do it together. Like you as the
Yeah.
publishing house, like you do it together with the author. So they don't like, it's not like, oh, here's my manuscript, now tell me what to do with it. No, it's like it's teamwork. So for me, it always
Yeah.
feels like it's somewhere in between. So if you're not sure which way you want to go, it's like almost the hybrid version of that.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
so like obviously when we do editing, we work with the author. But as you know, when we do copywriting, which for your listeners, that includes the back cover description and some of the
yeah,
marketing materials and the synopsis, we have the copywriter do a version of it. It gets sent to the author. They revise and back and forth a few times until we're
yes,
satisfied. And similarly with the cover, we get the author to
yeah,
fill in a form of what they want on the cover, and our designer tries to match that. And we go back and forth a little bit. So if there are some changes that the author wants, we try to accommodate them within reason. The only reason I say
yes.
that is because we've published close to 100 books now. So we have a little bit of a sense of what people are looking for in a cover. But we do try to work
Yeah.
with the author to make sure that they are satisfied with the cover as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you are looking for like the middle way between going big and traditional and do self-publishing, and you are writing in these genres, do think of Deep Design Express. Okay, well, I will ask you later for all the links and I'll put in the description. Thank you. This has been the longest heart-to-heart conversation I've ever had, I think. Thank you so much. I hope this was useful. It was always, I'm always happy to talk with you and share ideas with you and learn from you. So this is really fun for me. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah,
Enjoy your
thank you for
Saturday.
having me. I will. Thank you.
Always, always. And we'll talk soon.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Bye bye.